Hello, everybody. We're reading with Jimmy. We're reading Fyodor Dostoevsky's A Novel in Nine Letters, a short story. Letter number 1, from Peter to Ivan Petrovich. Dear Sir and most precious friend, Ivan Petrovich, for the last 2 days, I have been, I may say, in pursuit of you, my friend, and having to talk over most urgent business with you, I can't come across you anywhere. Yesterday, while we were at Simone Alexievich's, my wife made a very good joke about you, saying that Tatiana Petrovna and you were a pair of birds always on the wing. You haven't been married 3 months and you already neglect your domestic hearth. We all laughed heartily from our genuine kindly feeling for you, of course. But joking apart, my precious friend, you have given me a lot of trouble. Simone Alexievich said to me that you might be going to the ball at the Social Unions Club. Leaving my wife with Simone Alexievich, good lady, I flew off to the Social Union. It was both funny and tragic. Fancy my position, me at a ball, and alone without my wife. Ivan Andreevich met me in the porter's lodge and seeing me alone at once concluded, the rascal, that I had a passion for dances, and taking me by the arm wanted to drag me off by force to a dancing class, saying that it was too crowded at the Social Union, and that an ardent spirit didn't have the room to turn, and that his head ached from petroleum meganote. I found neither you nor Tatina Petronova, so Ivan vowed and declared that you would be at Wolfram Wit at the Alexander Theater. So I flew off to the theater, and you were not there either. This morning I expected to find you at the Technikov's. No sign of you there. Technikov said you were at Perplexity. That same thing there. You weren't there. In fact, I am quite worn out. You can judge how much trouble I have taken. And now I'm writing to you. There's nothing else I can do. My business is by no means a literary one. You understand me? It would be better to meet face to face. It's an extremely necessary to discuss with you and as quickly as possible. So I beg you, come to us with Tatina Petronova to tea and for a chat in the evening. My Anna Milanova will be extremely pleased to see you. You will truly, as they say, oblige me to my dying day. By the way, my precious friend, since I have taken up my pen, I'll go into all that I have against you. I have a slight complaint to make. In fact, I must reproach you, my worthy friend, for an apparently very innocent little trick which you have played at my expense. You are a rascal, a man without conscience. About the middle of last month, you brought into my house an acquaintance of yours, Evgeny Nikolaevich. You vouched for him by your friendly, and for me, of course, sacred recommendation. I rejoiced at the opportunity of receiving the young man with open arms. And when I did so, I put my head in a noose. Well, a noose it hardly is. But it's turned out to be a pretty business. I have not time now to explain. And indeed, it is an awkward thing to do in writing. Only a very humble request, from you, my malicious friend. Could you not somehow, very delicately in passing, drop a hint into the young man's ear that there are a great many houses in the metropolis besides ours? It's more than I can stand, my dear fellow. We fall at your feet, as our friend Simonovich says. I will tell you all about it when we meet. I don't mean to say that the young man has sinned against good manners or is lacking in spiritual qualities or is not up to the mark in some way. On the contrary, he's an amiable, pleasant fellow, but wait until we meet. Meanwhile, if you could see him, for goodness sake, whisper a hint to him, my good friend. I would do it myself, but you know what I am. I simply can't. And that's all about it. You introduced him, but I will explain myself more fully this evening anyway. Now, goodbye. I remain, etc. P.S. My little boy has been ailing for last week and gotten worse. Every day he's cutting his poor little teeth. My wife is nursing him all the time and is depressed, poor thing. Be sure to come, and you will give us real pleasure, my precious friend. Letter number 2, from Ivan to Peter. Dear Sir Peter Ivanitch, I got your letter yesterday. I read it and was perplexed. You looked for me goodness knows where, and I was simply at home till 10 o'clock. I was expecting Ivan Ivanitch Tolkolnov. And at once on getting your letter, I set out with my wife. I said, at the expense of taking a cab, and I reached your house about 6:30, and you were not at home, but we were met by your wife. I waited to see you to 10:30. I couldn't stay later. I set off with my wife and went to the expense of a cab again. Saw her home and went with myself to the Perplexins, thinking that I might meet you there. But again, I was out of my reckoning. And when I got home, I didn't sleep all night. I felt uneasy. And in the morning, I drove round to you 3 times, 9, 10, and at 11. 3 times I went to the expense of a cab. And again, you left me in the lurch. I read your letter and I was amazed. You know, you write about Yevgeny Nikolaevich and you beg me to whisper some hint and do not tell me what it was about. I commend your caution, but all letters are not alike. And I don't give documents of importance to my wife for curl papers. So I'm puzzled, in fact, to know with what motive you wrote all this to me. However, if it comes to that, why should I meddle in this matter? I don't poke my nose in other people's business. You cannot be at home to him. I only see that I must have a brief and decisive explanation with you, and moreover, time is passing. And I'm in straits and I don't know what to do. If you are going to neglect the terms of our agreement, a journey for nothing? A journey costs something too. And my wife's whining for me to get her a velvet mantle of the latest fashion. About Yevgeny Nikolaevich, I hasten to mention that when I was at Pavla Simovich Perplexin's yesterday, I made inquiries without loss of time. He had 500 serfs in the province of Yersalov, 500 serfs, and he has expectations from his grandmother for an estate of 300 serfs near Moscow. How much money he has, I can't tell. I think you ought to know that better. I beg you once and for all to appoint a place where I can meet you. You met Ivan Andreevich yesterday, and you write that he told you that I was at the theater with my wife. I write that he's a liar, and it shows how little he is to be trusted in such cases. That only the day before yesterday he did his grandmother out of 800 rubles. I have the honor to remain. P.S. My wife is going to have a baby. She's very nervous about it and feels depressed at times. At the theater, they sometimes have firearms going off and sham thunderstorms, and for fear of a shock to my wife's nerves, I didn't take her to the theater. I have no great partiality for the theater myself. Letter number 3. From Peter to Ivan. My precious friend, Ivan Petrovich. I am to blame, 1,000 times to blame, but I hasten to defend myself. Between 5 and 6 yesterday, just as we were talking of you with the warmest affection, a messenger from Uncle Stephen Alexeyevich galloped up with the news that my aunt was very bad. Being afraid of alarming my wife, I didn't say a word of this to her, but on the pretext of other urgent business, I drove off to my aunt's house. I found her almost dying. Just at 5 o'clock, she had a stroke, and the third she had in the last 2 years. Karl Fyodorovich, their doctor, told me that she might not live through the night. You can judge from my position, dearest friend. We were on our legs all night in grief and anxiety. It wasn't until morning that, utterly exhausted and overcome by moral and physical weakness, I lay down on the sofa. I forgot to tell them to wake me up and only woke up at 11:30. My aunt was much better. I drove home to my wife, and she, poor thing, was quite worn out, expecting me. I snatched a bite of something, embraced my little boy, reassured my wife, and set off to call on you. You were not at home. At your flat, I found Yevgeny Nikolaevich, and when I got home, I took up a pen, and here I am writing to you. Don't grumble. Be cross with me, my true friend. Beat me, chop my head off my shoulders, but don't deprive me of your affection. From your wife, I learned that you will be at Slavanov's this evening. I will certainly be there. I look forward with the greatest impatience to seeing you. And I remain, etc. P.S. We are in perfect despair about our little boy. Karl Fyodorovich prescribes rhubarb. He moans. Yesterday he didn't know anyone. This morning he did not know us and began lisping, Papa, Mama, Boo. My wife is in tears the whole morning. Letter number 4. From Ivan to Peter. My dear Sir Peter Ivanovich, I am writing to you in your room at your bureau, and I am before taking up the pen, I have been waiting for more than 2.5 hours for you. Now, allow me to tell you straight out, Peter, that my frank opinion about this shabby incident. From your last letter, I gathered that you were expected at Slavanov's and that you were inviting me to go there, and I turned up. I stayed 5 hours, and there was no sign of you. Why am I to be made a laughingstock to people, do you suppose? Excuse me, my dear sir. I came to you this morning. I hope to find you not imitating certain deceitful persons who look for people God knows where, and when they can be found at home at any suitable chosen time, there is no sign of you at home. I don't know what restrains me from telling you now the whole harsh truth. I will only say that I see you seem to be going back on your bargain regarding our agreement. And only now, reflecting on the whole affair, I cannot but confess that I am absolutely astounded at the artful workings of your mind. I see clearly now that you have been cherishing your friendly design for a long time. This supposition of mine is confirmed by the fact that last week, in an almost unpardonable way, you took possession of that letter of yours addressed to me, in which you laid down yourself, though rather vaguely and incoherently, the terms of our agreement in regard to a circumstance of which I need not remind you. You are afraid of documents. You destroy them, and you try to make a fool of me, but I won't allow myself to be made a fool of. For no one has ever considered me one hitherto, and every one has thought well of me in that respect. I am opening my eyes. You try and put me off, confuse me with talk of Evgeny Nikolaevich, when with your letter of the 7th of this month, which I still am at a loss to understand, I seek personal explanation from you. You make humbugging appointments while you keep out of my way. Surely you do not suppose, sir, that I am not equal to noticing this. You promise to reward me for my services, of which you are well aware, in the way of introducing various persons, and at the same time, I don't know how you did it, how you do it. You contrive to borrow money from me in considerable sums without giving a receipt, as happened no longer than last week. And now, having got the money, you keep out of the way. And what's more, you repudiate the service that I have done you in regard to Evgeny Nikolaevich. You're probably reckoning on my speedy departure to Simbirsk and hoping that I may not have time to settle your business, but I assure you solemnly, and I testify on my word of honor, that if it comes to that, I am prepared to spend 2 more months in Petersburg expressly to carry through my business, to attain my objects, and to get a hold of you, for I, too, on occasions, know how to get the better of people. In conclusion, I beg to inform you that if you do not give me satisfactory explanation today, first in writing and then personally face-to-face, and do not make a fresh statement in your letter of the chief points of the agreement existing between us, and do not explain fully your views in regard to Evgeny Nikolaevich, I shall be compelled to have you recourse to measures that you will find highly unpleasant to you, and indeed repugnant to me also. Allow me to remain. This is the 5th letter from Peter to Ivan. My dear and honored friend, Ivan Petrovich, I was cut to the heart by your letter. I wonder you were not ashamed, my dear but unjust friend, to behave like this to one of your most devoted friends. Why be in such a hurry, without explaining things fully, wound me with such insulting suspicions? But I hasten to reply to your charges. You did not find me yesterday, Ivan Petrovich, because I was suddenly and quite unexpectedly called away to a deathbed. My aunt, Yefimya Nikonova, passed away yesterday evening at 11 o'clock in the night. By general consent of the relatives, I was selected to make the arrangements for the sad and sorrowful ceremony. I had so much to do, I had not time to see you this morning, nor even send you a line. I am grieved to the heart at the misunderstanding which has arisen between us. My words about Evgeny Nikolaevich, uttered casually and in jest to you, have taken quite the wrong sense, and have ascribed to them a meaning deeply offensive to me. You refer to money, and you express your anxiety about it, but without wasting words, I am ready to satisfy all your claims and demands. Though I must remind you that the 350 rubles that I had from you last week were in accordance with a certain agreement, and not by way of a loan. In the latter case, there would certainly have been a receipt. I will not condense to discuss the other points mentioned in your letter. I see that it is a misunderstanding. I see it as your habitual hastiness, hot temper, and obstinacy. And I know your good-heartedness and open character will not allow doubts to persist in your heart. And that if you will make, in fact, you will be the first to hold out your hand to me. You are mistaken, Ivan Petrovich. You are greatly mistaken. Although your letter has deeply wounded me, I should be prepared even today to come to you and apologize. But I have been, since yesterday, in such a rush and flurry that I am utterly exhausted and scarcely stand on my feet. To complete my troubles, my wife is laid up. I am afraid she is seriously ill. Our little boy, thank God, is better, but I must lay down my pen. I have a mass of things to do, and they are urgent. Allow me, my dear friend, to remain at some. Letter number 6. Dear Sir Peter, this is from Ivan to Peter. I've been waiting 3 days. I tried to make a profitable use of them. Meanwhile, I feel that politeness and good manners are the greatest ornaments for everyone. Since my last letter of the 10th of this month, I have neither by word nor deed reminded you of my existence, partly in order to allow you to undisturbed to perform the duty of a Christian in regard to your aunt, partly because I needed the time for certain considerations and investigations in regard to a business you know of. So now I hasten to explain myself to you in the most thoroughgoing and decisive manner. I frankly confess that on reading your first 2 letters, I seriously suppose you didn't understand what I wanted. That was how it was I rather sought an interview with you, an explanation face-to-face. I was afraid of writing, and I blame myself for lack of clearness in the expression of my thoughts on paper. You are aware that I have not the advantages of education and good manners, and that I shun a shallow show of gentility, because I've learned from bitter experience how misleading appearances often are, and that a snake sometimes lies hidden under flowers. But you understood me. You did not answer me as you should have done, because in the treachery of your heart, you had planned beforehand to be faithless to your word of honor and to the friendly relations existing between us. You have proved this, absolutely, by your abominable conduct towards me of late, which is fatal to my interest, which I did not expect, and which I refused to believe till the present moment. From the beginning of our acquaintance, you captivated me by your clever manners, by the subtlety of your behavior, your knowledge of affairs, and the advantages to be gained by association with you. I imagined that I had found a true friend and a well-wisher. But now I recognize clearly that there are many people who, under a flattering and brilliant exterior, hide venom in their hearts, and who use their cleverness to weave snares for their neighbor and for unpardonable deceptions, and so are afraid of pen and paper. And at the same time, they use fine language, not for the benefit of their neighbor and their country, but to drug and bewitch the reason of those who have entered into business relations of any sort with them. Your treachery to me, my dear sir, can be clearly seen from what follows. In the first place, when in the clear and distinct terms of my letter I described my position, sir, and at the same time asked you in my first letter what you meant by certain expressions and intentions of yours, principally in regard to Yevgeny Nikolaevich, you tried, for the most part, to avoid answering, and confounding me by any doubts and suspicions, you calmly put the subject aside. And then, after treating me in a way which can't be described by any seemly word, you began writing that you were wounded. Pray, what am I to call that, sir? And then, when every minute was precious to me, and when you had set me running about after you all over the town, you wrote, pretending personal friendship, letters in which you intentionally avoid mentioning of business, and you spoke utterly irrelevant matters, to wit, of the illness of your good lady, for whom I have in any case every respect, and how your baby has been dosed with rhubarb and was cutting a tooth. All of this you alluded to in every letter with disgusting regularity. That was insulting to me. Of course, I'm prepared to admit that a father's heart may be torn by the sufferings of his babe. But why make mention of this when something different, far more important and interesting was needed? I endured it in silence, but now when time has elapsed and I think it's my duty to explain myself. Finally, treacherously deceiving me several times by making humbugging appointments, you tried, it seems, to make me play the part of a fool and a laughingstock for you, which I never intended to be. And then, after first inviting me and thoroughly deceiving me, you informed me that you were called away to your suffering aunt who had had a stroke, precisely at 5 o'clock, as you stated in shameful exactitude. Luckily for me, sir, in the course of these 3 days, I've succeeded in making inquiries, and I've learned from them that your aunt had a stroke on the day before the 7th, not long before midnight. From this fact, I see that you have made use of sacred family relations in order to deceive persons in no way concerned with them. Finally, in your last letter, you mentioned the death of your relatives, as though it had taken place precisely at the time when I was to have invited you to consult about various business matters. Pardon me, but here, the vileness of your arts and calculations exceeds all belief. From the trustworthy information from which I was able to luckily chance to obtain in the nick of time, I have found out that your aunt died 24 hours later than the time you so impiously fixed for her decease in your letter. I shall never have done if I enumerate all the signs of which I have discovered your treachery in regard to me. It is sufficient indeed for any impartial observer that in every letter you style me your true friend. You call me all sorts of polite names for which you do your best of my belief for no other object than to put my conscience to sleep. I have come now to the principal act of deceit and treachery in regard to me, to wit, your continual silence of late in regard to everything concerning our common interests, in regard to your wicked theft of the letter in which you stated, through in language somewhat obscure and imperfectly intelligible to me, our mutual agreements, your barbarous, forceful loan of 350 rubles, which you borrowed from me as your partner without giving any receipt, and finally, your abominable slanders of our common acquaintance, Yevgeny Nikolaevich. I see clearly now that you meant to show me that he was, if you will allow me to say so, like a billy goat, good for neither milk nor wool, and that he was neither one thing nor the other, neither fish nor flesh, which you put down as a vice in him in your letter of the 6th instant. I knew Yevgeny Nikolaevich as a modest and a well-behaved young man, whereby he may well attract and gain and deserve respect in society. I know also that every evening for the last fortnight, you've been putting into your pocket dozens, sometimes hundreds of rubles, playing games of chance with Yevgeny Nikolaevich. And now you disavow all this. And you not only refuse to compensate me for what I have suffered, but have even appropriated money belonging to me, tempting me by suggestions that I should be a partner in the affair and luring me with various advantages which were to accrue. After having appropriated in most illegal way money of mine and of Yevgeny's, you declined to compensate me, resorting to the object to calumny, which you should have unjustly blackened in my eyes, of a man whom I, in my efforts and extortions, introduced into your house. While on the contrary, from what I hear from your friends, you are still almost slobbering over him to give out the whole world that he's your dearest friend. But there is no one in the world such a fool as not to guess at once what your real designs are at aiming at and why your friendly relations really mean. I should say that they mean deceit, treachery, forgetfulness of human duties and proprietaries, contrary to the law of God, and vicious in every way. I take myself as a proof of an example. In what way have I offended you, and why have you treated me in this godless fashion? I will end my letter. I have explained myself, and now in conclusion, sir, if you do not in the shortest possible time after receiving this letter return to me in full, first, the 350 rubles I gave you. Secondly, all the sums that should come to me according to your promise. I will have recourse to every possible means to compel you to return it, even to the open force. Secondly, to the protection of the laws. And finally, I beg to inform you that I am in possession of facts which, if they remain in the hands of your humble servant, may ruin and disgrace your name in the eyes of the whole world. Allow me to remain. The seventh letter. Ivan Petrovich, when I received your letter, with your vulgar and at the same time clear letter, my impulse was at first minute was to tear it into shreds, but I preserved it as a curiosity. I do, however, sincerely regret the misunderstanding and unpleasant relations. I did not mean to answer you, but I'm compelled by necessity. I must in these lines inform you that it would be very unpleasant for me to see you in my house at any time. My wife feels the same. She is in delicate health, and the smell of tar upsets her. My wife sends your wife the book Don Quixote de la Mancha with her sincere thanks. As for the galoshes you say you left behind you in your last visit, I must regret to inform you that they are nowhere to be found. They are still being looked for, but if they do not turn up, then I will buy you a new pair. I have the honor to remain your sincere friend. Letter number 8. On the 16th of November, Peter Ivanitch received by post 2 letters addressed to him. Opening the first envelope, he took out a carefully folded note on pink paper. The handwriting was his wife's. It was addressed to Yevgeny Nikolaevich and dated November 2nd. There was nothing else in the envelope. Peter read, Dear Eugene, yesterday was utterly impossible. My husband was at home the whole evening. Be sure to come tomorrow punctually at 11. At 10:30, my husband is going to Tarskowsk and not coming back till evening. I was in a rage all night. Thank you for sending me the information and the correspondence. What a lot of paper. Did she really write all that? She has style, though. But many thanks, dear. I see you love me. Don't be angry. But for goodness sake, come tomorrow. A.D. Peter tore open the other letter. Peter Ivanitch, I should never have set foot in your house anyway. You need not have trouble to soil paper about it. Next week I'm going to Simbirsk. Yevgeny Nikolaevich remains your precious and beloved friend. I wish you luck, and don't trouble about the galoshes. On the 17th of November, Ivan received 2 letters addressed to him. Opening the first letter, he took out a hastily and carelessly written note. The handwriting was his wife's, and it was addressed to Yevgeny Nikolaevich and dated August 4th. There was nothing else in the envelope. Ivan read, Goodbye, goodbye, Yevgeny Nikolaevich. The Lord reward you for this too. May you be happy. But my lot is bitter, terribly bitter. It's your choice. If it had not been for my aunt, I should have put such trust in you. Do not laugh at me, nor at my aunt. Tomorrow is our wedding, and aunt is relieved that a good man has been found and that he will take me without a dowry. I took a good look at him for the first time today, and he seems good-natured. They are hurrying me. Farewell, farewell, my darling. Think of me sometimes. I shall never forget you. Farewell. I signed this like the last of my first letters. Do you remember the time? The second letter was as follows. Ivan, tomorrow you will receive a new pair of galoshes. It's not my habit to filch from other men's pockets, and I am not fond of picking up all sorts of rubbish on the streets. Yevgeny Nikolaevich is going to Simbirsk in a day or two on his grandfather's business, and he's asked me to find him a traveling companion. Wouldn't you like to take him with you? You've been reading with Jimmy. That was A Novel in 9 Letters by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Learn more by watching our video analysis of this. And if you have any questions, you can always email me, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Thank you so much for being here. Look forward to the next story, and please look at the analysis.